All right, we should be live. We should be live. So, I guess as we get started, I'll just offer what we're going to do here as best I can. I don't teach how to astral project because, to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know how. Um, for me, it occurred very naturally and very normally. However, I'm aware of essentially the mental or cognitive difficulties in sort of enabling this as it opens. And what I feel is that everyone's doing it already. Really, what we're doing is becoming aware. So this is what my hypothesis is to you as a sort of a viewer and friend. Um, you're already doing the astral traveling. It's already happening. What you're really looking for is participation, active observation of the phenomena that you know as astral projection. There is no separate will here from your self to self, the part of you that's projecting and the part of you like traveling and the part of you here. There's no actual separation here or difference. So in the astral, one has to start to recognize that although it may feel like they're choosing what they're doing, it's this similar sort of experience of here where it's sort of a false agency, you could say. You're reviewing, you're still watching because you're using the same eye to observe just another body that you have doing whatever it's doing. So this is most easily done in meditation or on the way into sleep. So this is where it tends to occur, right? Of course. And so I'll just go into my experience of it. And what I'm going to try and do is highlight and expand on some of the areas that are more helpful, I guess. And if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them in the chat. What I'm doing now is I'll go through sort of the basic things that I wanted to cover that felt important to this. And thank you for the people that have reached out asking about it. I guess I've been speaking a little bit about astral projection on the channel for a while now, and also recommending it as a way to sort of peruse consciousness. And people are asking questions about it. So thank you very much for your questions, and I'll do my best. So first, I'll just want to recommend that the how to astral project is not generally where I recommend people start. First, what I just recommend people do is recognize that it's a thing. First, we know it's a thing. Second, we want to look at the mental or cognitive blockages that exist in us against this thing. So the parts of us that think it might be spooky, the parts of us that don't necessarily think that it can happen, a lot of this is actually subconscious, sitting kind of below the surface. So the conscious awareness of us might be like, yeah, okay, I think I can do it. Sure, I could probably maybe do it, but maybe I probably have to study for a while, or I have to learn all these things. And no, like the human aspect of us that thinks it's learning things doesn't have to learn this. This is an innate, natural part of our energetic body that we already have full access to. What we're trying to do is recognize that we can observe it. And when the pulling from that astral body, and there's so many names for these things, I'm trying to keep it basic. So whatever names you want to call these things, etheric planes, astral planes, whatever, there are significant differences. But for the purposes of what we're saying here, instead of confusing things, we'll just say you have an astral body. Some people might call it the Merkaba. It's not quite accurate to these concepts, but it doesn't really matter. It's a body of yours that's able to travel into the astral planes. When that body starts to move, if the awareness or presence is in the body, it feels like you're dying, sort of. It feels that you feel that you're leaving the body, and then what? What happens then? So when we want to start to astral project, we have to essentially do what Jesus said: seek first the kingdom. This sounds kind of contradictory or not, like it doesn't make much sense. Seek first the kingdom. What that means is seek first the kingship or the sonship, the lordship that you have over your own beingness, that you're an eternal, infinite being, that you don't have to fear movement of this sort. You don't have to fear losing the vessel. You don't have to fear these things. These are the things that subconsciously prohibit us, that push us back, that make us go, oh, I'm losing the body. You may have even had experiences already where you start to leave the body, or feels like maybe that's what's happening, and then suddenly you're ripped back in, and there's a jolt or a shock or this fear of what could happen. Especially, there are sort of, I don't know what to call them, gateways or portals or wormholes of some kind or something that you sometimes will move into, and these can feel like you're in a river of light or darkness that you don't really know what's going on, but you're feeling a lot of movement and lots of stuff's happening. You're going places fast. Things are everywhere. You can't see anything. You might hear things, either a like really high buzzing, might be a lower buzzing, or it could sound like screaming or even echoing, howling and stuff. We need to be able to essentially experience all of this without being like, oh my gosh, where am I? It's kind of like, almost like if you're in a haunted house and things are popping out at you, you have to be able to have a bit of a presence to understand none of this is going to hurt me. None of it's going to hurt me. We have to sort of get there. So the way that I recommend doing this is the Christ way, which is seek first the kingdom, which means seek first the peace and faith in God that you're fine. Know your infiniteness, know that you're an eternal being first. Once you're there, then this stuff starts to just sort of occur naturally, you could say. The cities open up, and part of the cities is true sight, which allows you to view the various experiential layers, you could say, of reality a little more clearly, and it usually builds like over time. When the cities first activate, you tend to get tempted to like try to use them, like try to like, I'm going to, me, the little I, the Sean, or the small self is going to decide to then use this divine gift. Usually that either just doesn't work, or it works in a way that is very uncomfortable somehow in the future or in the present. It's somehow not great. Basically, it allows us to have the foundation of faith and truth in our presence and awareness of ourself that then helps us to move forward, that helps us to not worry when all of this chaos is swirling around us in the astral, that we're in under some type of attack, or somehow not in control. Because a lot of times, especially when we're in these little wormhole things, I don't even know what to call them, but when we're in these things, that you just are going to fall into something. You're going to pop out somewhere, and you don't know necessarily what that is. Depending on how proficient and experienced we are with astral travel, like our will starts to be more aware. We start to be more aware of like what we're actually doing and where we're going. But at first, it's usually more like you're just kind of along for the ride. So we have to not be so associated. We have to almost see it like we see a dream, or a lucid dream. And so the difference between sort of a lucid dream and an astral experience is that the lucid dream, the person kind of knows, like, this is a dream. In the astral, it's sort of, you have sensation, like you have emotion, you have, at least this is my experience, you have emotion, you have like different things that are with you that are remnants, or they're not as intense as they were in the physical body. So the more in the physical illusion we are, the more the astral resists, like the astral eye resists that. Like our connection from that plane, from the third density plane or the third dimensional plane into the next astral plane, is sort of lessened because we're really rooted. We're like, if we eat lots and lots of meat, We might feel that, like, different. It's all these different things, but as we're rooted more here, it's harder to observe that. So we want to just unanchor from here. So I recommend doing things like trying a fast, setting intentions to astral, to like just sort of asking for the divine to aid us in this. I'd really like to try this. And people might talk about taking supplements and doing all these practices. Honestly, it's almost like I would say that the faith and trust that we can is actually more important than any of that stuff. However, there are a lot of people that have read these books and tried for many years and then achieved these states. What I would say is that all of that work is essentially trying to deprogram hallucination and conditioning. Hallucinations that make us think that we can't go. It's amnesia. It's like it's almost like the human is constructing for themselves a particular outline to follow to have that particular story. So there's nothing wrong with it. If we feel inclined to learn it in a very normal way, perhaps we're just oriented that way, and that's how the soul needs to remember. So it's not that what I'm trying to say is, for our own particular path, we have to notice that. So for me, I started to look into how to do it, and I was like, this is so much work. This can't be right. It just can't be right. It's way too much work to do something that I know should just be natural to the soul. Of course, it can just go where it goes. Of course, right? It can just pop out and do what it's doing, right? Of course it can. So in that case, what am I trying to do? I'm really just trying to remove any barriers or fears that push against that. I'm not trying to do anything. That worked for me. But that's because I already, just with my sort of, you could say my zodiacal or astrological makeup, I'm all Pisces, and I'm all Pisces basically. in my 5 first places, it's all Pisces and water, and then a Sagittarius Mars. So I'm not really connected into the world the way people normally are, or other people are. Naturally. So that's why this has been quite easy for me. One of the reasons is that just not only do I recall that the soul's truth is that I can just do this, of course I can, but also I recall that none of this place is as real to me as the internal world. So what could I be missing out on anyway? If I am meant to not be here, then I won't be here. So if I happen to not be able to come back, it's not really a thing to me. It's like, oh, well, that's new. I guess the Pisces in me will just flow with the river. If I'm gone, I guess I'm gone. So these confrontations or existential type of inquiries to ourselves help us to form a foundational feeling of courage and faith that we're fine where we are and where we're going, regardless of how turbulent it seems and weird. In the astral, we have to sort of like almost just treat it like it's a dream. And that's why I say seek first the kingdom. Like, because if we don't have that foundation of confidence that I happened to have in this particular area, then we end up like fighting ourselves with it all, because we're afraid. And so then we start to have those half experiences where you pop out. Or for me, I actually there's another thing to bring up. I get too excited and end them that way, because I get way too elated, way too excited. And then suddenly I'm back in the body. That happens as well. So any type of overinvestment in the experience during the experience can trigger us to fall back into the body. I believe that the experience continues. I believe the soul's doing whatever it's doing. You're just, like I said, participating and seeing more. You're more participating in the higher lesson plans. Oftentimes, these souls are checking in with friends, visiting with strangers, talking about things. At least this has been my experience. The meeting up and checking in with stuff and hearing things. And if it's important messaging, it also gets filtered down into your dream state. So a lot of your dream state is also influenced by what you're doing at a precise or in a linear way at a similar time as your astral body. Not all the time necessarily, but often this happens. So it all bleeds together that way. It's all relevant to itself. So if you're another way to assess your readiness is if you're having nightmares and the nightmares are scaring you, then you're probably not really ready to join into deeper astral travel. Like a nightmare has to be basically amusing. If a nightmare isn't amusing, then you're likely still having these cognitive blocks that I'm talking about, which isn't a problem. It's just about noticing, right? It's just about noticing where we are and taking ownership, responsibility for it. And then also, I like to say, giving it to God, like, God, help me remember you, help me remember the presence of the Christ in me during these nightmares so that I can be more at peace during them. And then they just sort of become amusing, like I said. And that's a good way to assess around our readiness, like also our capacity for lucid dreaming. And then how connected are we? How into the lucid dream are we? You know, does it freak us out if we sort of create something weird in our lucid dream? How much tangible creation are we doing in our lucid dreaming? Are we just in an environment lucidly roaming it? Or are we able to switch environments, bring new characters in, do all these things? This starts to really show us our capacity for the astral planes, in my experience. And it's like a graduation up. So it's like we dream and have nightmares, and then we begin to lucid dream. And then as we get all really very comfortable with all of that, and then also understanding that the body and all these things are like different things, and that the illusion here isn't distinctly real that way, we move further and further, and more opens up to us. What else did I want to say? So, essentially the point I'm making is all limitation that makes us believe we can't do this is just a result of our ego. It's just our ego saying, I'm a limited small self. I don't know how to do this. I don't know the way to do this. Therefore, it's not possible for me. It's the same way that the ego approaches meditation. It's the same way it approaches every other spiritual thing that it doesn't think it can do. Meditation or psychic abilities. Any of this stuff is all built into our capacity as a being. The soul may not have experience with it yet. So the soul, depending on its age, will have experience with whatever it has. So we're essentially noticing that whatever I already know as a soul, I'm opening to as saying, I should know how to do all of this. And that's when, for me, I started to just have a lot of these things like pop on. I don't have all the things, like I've said before, I can't see really aura colors. I can see auras and glows and the hues of the aura over things, but I can't see the coloring. And I don't see some of the beings other people see. People that are talking about dragons and giants and Anak and Jotun and things roaming around and Fae. Occasionally I've had glimpses of things, but just sort of not the way these people are experiencing them. So it's really important to recognize that just because one of us can just pop in and it's super simple for us, it doesn't mean that everyone can just pop in like that. However, it does mean that we all can and are doing it already. We're just remembering that we can, remembering how to interface that. And then as the soul, it's sort of the same thing. Like the soul's also learning, you could say. The soul's learning in like a more perfected way. So it's a little different, but it's the same thing essentially. And the ego thinks it's learning. The ego thinks it's doing things and thinks it's preparing itself for something. It's accumulating information for something, which isn't quite the case. The ego just likes to tell itself that. And it makes us feel usually comfortable when our ego is more influential on us. It helps us feel comfortable. So I don't like to talk about the ego too much because it kind of upsets people sometimes. there's like good and there's positive and negative sort of components to it. So one of the positive things is that the ego can help us feel calm. It can help us nurture ourselves. Another, but the negative thing of it is that it also is the voice that sort of detriments anything that seems to expand us. It's like that doubting voice is also the ego, right? So we want to try not to listen to any of that, and just sort of know in our hearts that we obviously can do these things, because if anyone can do it, if this guy on the internet's talking about it, then of course I can do it. Like, of course. So part of it is just like really recognizing that, really like rooting that into our consciousness and holding that. I think that was it. If any other cities open, this work that I'm talking about tends to open other cities, like manifestation things, like gifts, these weird miracles start to happen. And I won't go into all of them because it could happen in so many ways. Like I've heard of people starting to float, or thinking they're floating and then sort of crashing to the earth and then being like, was I just floating? Like I've heard of these things. So these things are essentially, just ignore these things. They're generally speaking, they're just temptations to try and sort of take your will, like your human ego will, and apply it in a weird way to some type of divine power, right? Usually it'll not work properly, or like things will get crappy somehow. But it's essentially, if your soul gets stuck on that, it's okay. But part of it is just to notice, oh, I'm actually not being at all humble here, and like sort of kneeling to the Father, to God, to guide me in this. And allow this to happen sort of spontaneously through me as a conduit of his love or her love. Or, you know, I'm trying to say the little I is going to take this divine thing and put it to this work and this aim, which is not generally conducive to what we're trying to do if we're trying to follow the path of light and positivity and service to others. In service to self, that's basically essentially what they are trying to do. In that pathway, they're trying to take those things and make sure the ego is not the ego, but there's enough personal identification as self to then grasp and harness all of that and bring that in, and then use that for that aim, whatever that is. But on the positive path, they're essentially almost like tricks, which eventually open us up to experience really even more phenomenal things. And it gets more and more phenomenal. These tend to open up from the same practices and thoughts that I'm sharing around safety in the body and around releasing, because releasing from fear of death essentially is the primary anchor that holds us here as far as our limitations go and our psychic abilities. That's primarily what it is like our fear that something can threaten us is actually what inhibits these things. Once we know we aren't threatenable at all, we can't even be threatened, let alone be hurt, then everything just wide open. But those realizations are sometimes a little hard fought. Sometimes there's things that have to come into our reality to really show us this. So I like to just tell people that when we're having these deeper explorations into our lower subconscious and deeper energy centers, this would down be in the red energy center, root energy center. These are our foundational core beliefs about ourselves and about us being a being, like maybe like an animal that just lives in its environment. Or are we going to claim that we're more than that? Are we a spirit that's controlling a vessel? Because if that's the case, then we actually need to convince ourselves of that deeply, which draws to us catalysts to make sure that happens when we truly decide, yes, okay, yes, that's what I am. Of course, that's what I am. It draws to us experiences that might make us question death, question these things more, and they arise, and this can bring up challenging confrontations in ourselves. This is why it's not generally recommended for initiates to go too far into these things without having someone to guide them, like a mentor or some type of teacher type thing. Luckily, in our age, there's so many people talking about these things that all we really need to do is look to some of our guides and teachers that we really trust, to sort of help them, or help bring us back and ground us back and get some more sustenance to give us some more faith in what's going on. Because some of these areas are sort of the darkest places. Like, it's essentially the darkest hell that we have in ourselves, where we believe that we can die. That's in like the deepest part of us. So it brings about hellish feeling when we're encountering these areas of ourselves. We tend to see it as dark night of the soul times, a bunch, right? It's much more intense than just a simple dark night of the soul. These things have degrees of intensity, or degrees of how far we go, and there's almost different layers and levels of it. And I think those end in this density, and then in the next densities, we don't have those dark night of the soul things. We just have some times where we feel tired. So that's it. We just feel tired. That's our suffering. So at least that's how I recall it. So yeah, I think now it's time to questions and things. We'll see what people said. Anybody said anything? Oh, we got a hi. Hi, Fathia. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Hello. Does anyone have any questions? Anything interesting? Experiences? Anything they want to talk about anything that I've shared so far? It's a good opportunity to get more in depth with the whole process. People might have some practices that are really simple. Maybe I'll just talk about that quickly. It will first feel like, almost like, that feeling from magnets when you get them too close together, you can feel there's this resistance or pulling happening. It's kind of like that, but I feel it mostly all over the chest and upper areas and in the back, and it just feels almost like I'm pulling out of myself, and there's this magnetic field that's getting torn apart or messed up somehow. So this kind of feels like we're literally falling apart from ourselves. And this can feel shocking. So that's the first sort of barrier we step past. The next depends on where we're going. If we're going to the upper astral, as I call it, or if we're going to the lower astral, we'll either sort of just, in my experience, just float up into one of those wormholes that I talked about, or we fall down. And we fall into, for me, it's like this, it's almost like a stone just circle, almost like a well, and I'm just falling down it. And not only am I falling, I'm also being pulled faster and faster by something that I can't feel. I don't know what it is. I can't see anything other than the stone a little bit around me, because the astral frame seems to emit a bit of a light. Namaste, Kendrick. Thank you. Namaste. I dream every night waking up with bruises. Oh, bruises. Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't had that experience, so I'm not sure how I would recommend working with that. If we have bruises showing up on the physical, it probably would indicate we're into some type of conflict in ourselves. Up in the astral somewhere, we're getting into stuff, and it's filtering down into the human experience, getting mirrored as fingers or bruises, grips on us. Sometimes people feel like it's a demonic possession, those types of things. But all of these things are aspects of our psyche trying to show us something. It's always trying to show us something. It's always an aspect of us that either we've created out of an illusion, or it is part of like light trying to show us something to lead us back home. So I only say that in case the bruises are freaking us out. I've woke up with weird things. Like I woke up with this. Maybe you can see it. Yeah, this thing. I woke up with that on my arm. Like it looks like an implant. It's not, but that's what it looks like. It looks like, but it was years ago that happened. But is there anything else? Oh, and so when you're falling down, if you fall into the area where the 72 demons of the Ars Goetia hang out, you start to hear howling and stuff and screaming. It might just sound like wind. It might sound like, it could sound like anything, but it usually sounds like a disharmony of angels, for me at least, like a choir of angels that doesn't know how to sing properly. For me, it's really disorienting and really abrasive. But now when I go down there, it just sounds like a more calm, like kind of a, so essentially what this represents for me is that the demons now in my lower red energy center are somewhat satiated, like chilled, more in peace, more in harmony with themselves down there. And so when we're going into dream and astral states, it's always like, what is this saying about me? What is this about me? What is it? What is this saying about me right now? It might be showing us something from the past, might be showing the future, might be showing something, but so when we come out of these states, it's good to try and do journals, because we usually forget it really quickly as the brain shifts into the more awake or like awake state. Which is actually more of a sleep state, to be honest. It falls asleep basically as it wakes up in the morning, which is kind of funny. But that's more or less what happens, and so that memory just slips away. So if we can like have a little dream journal, that will help with astral projection. If we're wanting to start lucid dreaming, trying to remind ourselves to check if we're in a dream while we're awake. We'll start to develop a habit, like pinch your hand or something like that. So Sarah T says, "Hi Sean, I want to commend you for your humility." Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's my goal, is to try my best. Sometimes I can come across kind of arrogant, but most recent lucid dream, I decided to fly, but I was flying so freaking fast I got scared and lost lucidity, and then was chased by the Elohim tiger. Ooh. I've also noticed in some dreams a distinct dimensional threshold where it feels like I'm creating footholds in 5D. Yeah, the dream take a different vibe as I descend back down. Yes, yeah, there are different layerings to what I just call this all the astral. I think that the dream plane, in my experience, is just an isolated or like contained plane within our own place to create, but it's part of what I call the astral as well. And we will kind of move through these various places, and it's, at first for me anyways, very hard to discern, am I in a dream, am I astral, like what's going on. So part of the learning is just learning, like, how can I discern? For me, it's mostly that the astral, there's more feeling. And yeah, in the astral, you begin to, this is why I talk about the demons and all these things in Malkuth, because I'm going down there in the astral to form the kingdom. Malkuth means kingdom. This is the red energy center, and this is where our kingdom layeth, so to speak. This is the kingdom within us. So if we go down there and we start to do work down there in the astral, we're actually, in dream time and stuff, we're actually like contributing to our own heaven building. We're usually at that point contributing in the 7th initiations or the crown chakra initiations and creating our heaven. So our heaven could be weird. Like my heaven is essentially this place where I've met this dragon that was chained and in hell and stuff, and in this void or vacuum of time that I had to visit and kind of free from that by bringing down the Messiah, the Christ, but also the 72 Shem angels, and had this huge ceremony down in the astral that I wrote this astral journey about that probably one day I'll share, our astral journal, I should say. It was a very wacky experience, but I ended up doing all of this and meeting this dragon and doing all these things. So now, after all of that and the harmony between all the demons and angels in the kingdom, we start to find this dragon is now like the ruler. The dragon representing the Kundalini, the serpent within us, the desires and all these things. It's actually the ruler of what's here now, but it's now in the light. It's been risen and exalted into its divine birthright. But now it's in this stage of like learning. So this actually represents Sean as a being as well. Sean as a being has only just realized the light properly, so to speak, after this procedure. It like almost a couple days after, we had like massive solar flares and all these things happened. And suddenly my experience as Sean just shifted immensely higher, vibrationally speaking. That's why I think we're talking about astral projection on the channel quite a bit, and working in consciousness to heal things that are like hidden to us, like our belief, and this also this kind of, usually this hatred, a little bit of hatred or like anger towards the physical vessel happens as well. Hi Debbie, thanks for coming. Nice to see you. So we have this, we tend to eventually have this, what's this word? This like hesitation around our physical vessel. Like it's kind of annoying because we feel that we should be able to move differently, or it seems limited. It hurts a bit, or it's like kind of, it only likes to eat things. It's getting hungry. It has to go to the bathroom. It's weird. It's kind of absurd to us at a certain point in our development that we're even having to do these things. It just seems silly. So we want to try to laugh at that. Of course, that's the healthy way, is just laugh. I'm an infinite being and I have to take a poop. Isn't that funny? That type of approach, right? That's what I recommend, because there's no point in getting upset with the body. But to get there, some of this is very, very subconscious, very deep. And that's why I like to recommend trying to set intentions to dream ourselves there, to astrally go there, whether dream time, lucid dream, or astral. They're essentially the same, different maybe experiences or tiers of experiences of the same type of thing. It's all, I think, interconnected and intertwined in that way. And the soul calls for the right thing for the right moment. And essentially, we have a certain amount of fear that our Creator but a certain amount of fear that our Creator has sort of said, if you have this certain threshold of fear stops and the experience can't manifest if fear hits this certain threshold. Is kind of like this logos' design, which is why we forget our birth as an infant, for example. It's so terrifyingly horrible to be born into hell. This is hell, by the way. Like this place is our representation of hell, and what we're doing is turning it into the kingdom, not by changing the world, but by changing our insides, so that the kingdom reflects out of us into the world, and then all we see around us is the kingdom. But it is a hell when we're born here as a soul. It's definitely hell, where it's cold, it's dark, we can't see, we don't know what's going on. We're suddenly disconnected from source, it feels, as well. And so by the mercy of our Creator, we forget all of that, because it passes the threshold of what is fair for the being to experience, so to speak. So I'm not sure why I was talking about that, but because basically our barrier to all of this is fear. So, and I'm not saying that so that we're hard on ourselves. Like, if it's okay to be afraid, but we want to notice the fear Isn't it funny? I'm an infinite being and I'm afraid of like the night hag or something. And if you're an adept, or if you've worked in magic, or if you've really studied occult at all, you'll be familiar with the night hag or the sleep paralysis demon, uh, whatever we call this entity. This is one of the first. I call it just a gateway. It's just a challenge. It's like a boss in a video game. This is one of the first ones you experience. And they're like, "No, I'm gonna hold you here." And they do, and it's the interesting part of it is that it's you holding you there. It's you, the one that's spooky and raising like a shadow figure coming above you, and I'm holding you here. It's all a game that you play with yourself. And it's when we first start encountering it, it's super spooky, super spooky. Okay, so Sarah says, "Oh, nice, thank you, Debbie. Thank you for the hugs." Sarah T says, "I've been having a lot of dreams where I'm fixing other timelines where things went badly, choosing different outcomes, and it feels about soul retrieval." Yep. Most recent was one where I was a priestess visiting a church, and I knew that they were going to persecute me for entering barefoot. I tried to enter anyway, and they showed me a contract stating I agreed. Was a damned soul and got angry and told them I know who I am, that my heart is good, and I ran out of the church. I feel I was fixing something that happened in another life regarding religion dogma. Yeah, actually, you bring up an amazing point. All of our healing's nonlinear. If there isn't a manifest physical experience that seems conducive to the learning for the soul, we will have some other opportunity to investigate that soul fragment. Like we'll have a dream, we'll visit a psychic, we'll tarot cards, we'll see a painting, whatever it is. We'll investigate this aspect actually simultaneously as the other aspect of ourself that perhaps actually lived this experience is doing. So they're learning from their experience, and we're like, oh, that's another part of me doing that at this time, essentially, so I don't have to, as a human, I don't have to be submitted to this type of predicament. This is allowing us to depolarize our consciousness away from negativity and lack and into positivity and expansive love, without experiencing that catalyst properly. Like we're just observing. When we take that and realization that that's all we're also doing here in this body, we're observing. Wow, right? Isn't that freeing? Wow, it's the same thing. All of the catalyst is not actually real. All of it is a dream of separation, right? It's all totally fabricated and hallucinated by our own amnesic mind. And this is what builds that foundation of faith. The power of God rests in my soul. So what could possibly be against me? What possible enemy could I have? Debbie said, I've done it once while dreaming, flew to Hawaii. Done it several times in meditation, though. Moldavite. Yes, Moldavite helps a lot with this because Moldavite opens up the third eye almost like, I would almost say it's one of the crystals I would say is almost dangerous to use irresponsibly. And I don't say these dangerous very much. So, take that for what it is. But I've been a little bit irresponsible with Moldavite before. And I'll just say, because I don't want to spook anyone, but I'll just say Moldavite opens the eye regardless of what we are like ready for, it seems. For me, anyways. It's so powerful. Maybe it's just that I'm attuned to it in a certain way. I'm super sensitive, perhaps, as an entity. But that was my experience. And my first experiences of it too were also traveling to places like I went to Brazil and other places, Venezuela and things. Just flew around to look at places and like Stonehenge. That's when like where it really began for me, was like that would happen. Um, and I think that's really normal. That's when we're astral traveling, but we're not like leaving the plane here. We're not leaving the mid plane, I call it. There's a mid plane. That's where we are. So everything is astrally there. Also, in the astral, you'll notice it's a little bit ahead of time. It's you're looking at if you're here now, let's say, and you go and look at a town, and there's like a construction site, you may see the finished building. You may see the finished product there, but it's not yet up. It's not yet even been designed. Maybe it's not yet even been consciously thought of by the being who owns the property or something. I don't know what that difference is. I don't know if it's months or years or time. Who knows? But that's what I've noticed, is that it's ahead. It's ahead. It happens there first, actually, and then filters into our reality. I think is a better way to look at it. So the astral is just another layering that's like over top of and behind, I guess, the reality we see in our human waking state, in my experience. Sarah says, Robert Moss is a dream shaman and wrote a book called The Boy Who Died and Came Back. That was incredible. Oh, that sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. That's what happened to me. And I don't talk about it publicly just because people get freaked out. So I don't talk about it really, but yeah, that sounds amazing. So Debbie says, knowing my dominion has completely stopped anything negative from even coming near me. Your faith and belief in your dominion and divinity makes the negative stuff stay away. Yeah, exactly. And the more, Debbie, I think you mentioned in one of the streams before, you were talking about how like we have to go into the darkness to find, that which we truly are, to like learn how to raise ourselves up, which effectively builds golden light or armor around the chinks we used to have, or the little holes we used to have in our auric field. That's what I like to call them, little holes, little draining spots. This is where negative entities will essentially be drawn to you. Like if we think about, just as an example, for a very human example of what that means, is like sometimes people wonder, like, why is everyone like mean to me, right? Why are they mean to you? They're mean to us because we have an aspect of ourself that thinks that we're not worth spending the certain amount of courtesy or respect that we truly deserve. So we end up experiencing people that mirror that to us. Anyone that's walking around with a high degree of their own self-righteousness will just go, oh, this person, they'll intuitively pick it up and call it nothing. They won't even think anything of it. It's all unconscious pretty much, but for these people. But they'll say, oh, you're an idiot or whatever. They'll say something. But we get to a place, no longer are we affronted by this because we speak with conviction and authority. It's not just our words, but it's our being. Like that's one of the reasons in the stream we don't often have a lot of like bickering with me. Like I try at least to do my best to have a humble, pure, but confident and convicted in what I'm saying. Like, but also then saying, this is just my experience. I don't know what it is. That's for you guys to decide. I'm just a dude. Right. But when people get a little power hungry about dominating people, they tend to focus on the ones that are dominatable, right? The ones that want to be dominated, essentially. In their energy, they're saying, I am dominatable. You can dominate me with your words, your whatever it is, because I don't feel valuable enough. And we have this same experience basically throughout everything we go through. and it changes and it shifts and stuff. But when we hold ourselves as I know and I don't, I literally cannot even care what you think about it. I care how you feel. I care about your heart. I care about your love. I care about the spark of soul and light you are. I don't care about your mind's opinions, though. Your mind's opinions are just, it's just words and stuff. I care about your being, and if things you're saying are like against me, then it just means you're confused, and I just send you love anyway. Like, it's really irrelevant to me. When we're in that state, then we don't tend to have people like come at us anymore. They don't bother because there's no opening. They sense. Recently, Russell Brand was in an interview with a guy on the show. Dang it, Flagrant. It was a podcast. It was a really good interview, lots of fun. But the guy, the host of the show, I forget his name. He was like, I had all these questions I wanted to ask you, Russell. Russell's clearly a very awakened soul, very awakened. He's like, I had all these questions, but I just can't. I have to just ask what's on my heart. Because I want it to seem smart. I want it to seem like I knew things so I could position myself, but I can't bullshit you. You cannot bullshit someone who sees through. Like, some people pick up on it, but others don't. And we end up we draw to us experiences to show us where we think our own confidence and convictions are lacking. So we can say, thank you for not like believing in myself. Like, I believe in myself. And then they question us, and we can be like, thank you so much for doing that. Because now I realize there's like a part of me that doesn't believe in what I'm about. Because that mattered to me. What you just said mattered. Which means I like believed you a little bit. Which means I'm crazy right now. I'm absolutely insane to believe you. Isn't that funny? Huh. Thank you so much, clown. They are a play of your consciousness in the mirror. A clown. When that's happening. It's Satan going, is the way to think about that. And that's why Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. To Peter, he's saying, good one, Satan, you're behind me. And Peter's like shocked because he's also giving Peter a lesson. He's saying, why are you letting Satan speak for you, Peter? Why are you letting the split tongue speak? One, don't split the tongue, right? Unify with God to speak. And so these ways of being are very, it sounds very like hard, impossible. But a lot of that reason is because we have these religious symbols like holy priests and things that show us that to be holy, you must act very, I have to just be so calm. Just peace be with you, brother. Peace be with you, sister. And if I'm not that way, then I'm not devoted to God. These types of things, these types of limiting beliefs are like really nuanced and small, and they limit us a lot. I'm not sure why I'm talking about that, but Lisa says, hey, Sean, new sub. What do you think about the idea that we are trapped here by reincarnation, prevented from going back to source? I think that's a funny idea. So I guess the Gnostics would probably talk about the archons and things, and the arc, or the high archons, and they are our prison keepers. All I would say is that that couldn't be the case. Certainly there are fourth and fifth density entities, groups of entities that are trying to turn the earth into an enslavement place. They have been essentially successful in coercing the earth into conflict-oriented behavior through thought implantation, essentially. That's primarily all that's happening. So people are like, oh, the queen, blah, blah, blah. Most of that is just the humans are puppets. The humans are the instruments of what's being done beyond, up higher. And we don't usually like to hear that. But what I try to teach is the thoughts that arrive in the human are under our domain to then participate in or not. So as far as prison reality goes and reincarnation, no, the life is itself evolutionary in this way. We're built, sealed within the very core of what is first created. The spark of what we are is the infinite all of the creator. The God spark is something that we could call that. That thing, the God spark, is undefinable and infinite, cannot be held by anything, and is simply everything, always, the singularity of allness, infinity itself. It couldn't be restrained, right? That's what all consciousness is. Even like you're looking at me now, but you're looking on a screen of some kind. Even in that screen, the components of that screen exist this spark. That's consciousness itself. It's all one field of consciousness. So there could not be any restriction or restraint from itself that way. However, consciousness evolves, right? It evolves and shifts frequency, it moves up. So people have started to recognize this place is hell and I feel trapped. This began years and years ago when these magical mysteries really took hold. And negative entities. So if you're an entity that's above, right, you want the people to go, yeah, we have prison keepers, jailers we have people holding us, we have entities holding us here. Or we're held here by God, or we're whatever we are, right? Wouldn't that be the ideal, the ideal message? Wouldn't that be the ideal propaganda? When humans speak, it's propaganda, either in positive ways or in negative fear-based ways, right? So when human mystics are talking about the archons that hold everything and the false light and the matrix and all, they're talking about not crystallized beings. They're not talking to people that are tuning into this content. These are the starseeds and the wanderers and the volunteers and the indigos and things. You guys are not the people that they're talking to. They're trying to convince the younger souls that the younger souls are stuck. So it's our job to go, that couldn't be true. And to say, you're stuck if you say so. Like, if you say so, sure. I mean, there's a story that's really important for this. There's a man standing in a corner, and he's told that he's been placed there, and that's it. That's what he sees. All the time, he's sorrowful. He's alone. He can't talk to anyone. There's no one there. All he can see is this corner. This man walking by looks over and sees this guy in the corner, and he says, hey, bud, what are you doing? And the guy's like, well, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. I'm just standing here. Who are you? And the guy's like, well, I'm behind you. If you just turn around, you come out this way and we can walk. So he turns around and realizes he was never trapped anywhere. It's that type of thing. So there are entities that want people to believe that they're under control, under the heel, so to speak, of the higher forces. But the earth is seated in a logos that holds a quarantine net over top of us. This is why we don't see as much activity in the sky as we would think is there. And one of the reasons, anyways, one of the reasons as well that things are quarantined and stopped from coming in here, just because it influences our free will. So most of the efforts are this type of thing to make people think they're being held somewhere. Also, if you think about what a prison is, it's a corrective facility, right? So we are in a school. It is a school for certain. It's an evolutionary school. That's what life is itself, is evolutionary. It has nothing to do with learning topics. It has to do with learning relationship with self to learn relationship with God. In other words, know thyself. Simply, know thyself to know God. That is all this is. That's all any experience is at all, because the Creator has created us to know itself in this logos. That's all we do. As far as I know, that's what all logoses do, or logoi, whatever we call them. So there's always like constant, I am this, I am this, I am this. And when we think we're separate, I am in this place and it's shitty, and these people are mean, and I'm stuck here. So it must be a prison, because that's what I reference in my mind as a place where I've been jailed, I've been restrained, and that. But there couldn't be restraint to an infinite being. So of course the concept couldn't be a sane concept. So that would be my teaching on it, and the Gnostics will fight me forever on that, but I think they're nuts. I don't think they know what gnosis is, which is weird to say, but it's just, gnosis is the integration of spiritual secrets. The spiritual secret is that you're not in jail. Like, you couldn't be in jail because you're an infinite being. That's like the secret. It's like the opposite of gnosis. Anyway. All right. Debbie says, I wear my Moldavite almost every day, but it took me a couple of weeks of slowly moving it closer each day. Yeah. It's crazy. Moldavite's great. Debbie says, making the shift into more self-love and self-respect, setting strong boundaries and walking away from those who don't love and respect you makes all that shift. Yeah, honestly. Oh, and you're so welcome, Lisa. It was a great question. Like Debbie said, great question. Gnostics and, everyone actually really wants to believe that like some being is holding us here, or that we're stuck reincarnating. Both the Christ and Buddha all taught that is not the case, that karma itself is an illusion. Karma is just story. To convert it to dharma, to convert it to understanding, all we have to understand is that there is no separation. So if we can get to a place of just being like, yeah, okay, everything's one. If we just keep reminding ourselves of that whenever we're perturbed, we start to pull away from all that karma, and we start to dissolve that because we just forgive it. Like, we're all one, so no one did anything to anyone. Whatever this is, I don't get it. I'm not going to try and understand it, but it must be the way things are supposed to be. That's when we start to transcend the karma. Now we're not held by any of this stuff. None of these things make any sense to us at this point. And so, I appreciate the Gnostic. I want to say I appreciate all the Gnostic, especially the magicians and the learning and all this stuff. It's just the archon stuff that really weirds me out. Like, why would they affirm lack of power to themselves? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It couldn't make any sense. There's one being. So where's the power? Who has what? It's insanity, really. So all of those theories, we're in a robot matrix simulation, beep, boop, 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 all those things. Some of those people aren't real. That's true, actually. There are entities here that are called thought forms that are made to appear to be a human, and they aren't real. Those things are funny, but they're not nearly as like all over the place as everyone says. Oh, that person is not real. Like celebrities, everyone all over the place is not real. No. Like this takes so much effort for one of these fifth density entities to construct one of these things and put it there and control it. They're not sentient the way that, like, they're almost like deep fakes, I think is the word that the kids use. But they do exist, but people are like, oh, they swapped her and him, and yeah, maybe, but not nearly as often. Also, there is no they. We. If anything, we. I'm so immature. Debbie says, through my mediumship experiences, no one is stuck. Their beliefs keep them stuck. Fear of going to hell or being judged keeps them stuck. But no one is actually ever stuck here. Exactly. the reincarnation cycle is because the soul has not yet recognized that it is already whole and perfect. So it's going through a particular set of archetypal stories in the logos until it gets to a place where it's done all of this before and it begins to get bored. This is when it starts to feel purposeless in the world, the soul. The soul will feel purposeless. It may start to think depressive thoughts, but really it just may be like, I just don't care. I just don't care. I don't care. That's usually indicative of the older soul. Believe it or not, the younger soul is sucked into everything, cares about everything a lot. It's very wrapped up, both emotionally and cognitively, in like the reality. Like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I'm so into this. I'm going to make myself the best. I'm going to do this and that. This usually also happens normally in humans, regardless of anything, soul age or not, prior to being around 30. They don't have their Saturn return, so they tend to be a little veiled. Now, this seems to be shifting a bit. Like, younger people seem to be more aware nowadays. So I don't know, but I would say generally we're not actually spiritual adults until around 30. Like, it's like, as far as I can feel, it seems almost impossible to be like a spiritual adult that can not only go to the places, but bring it into the frame, bring it into the experience. Yeah, probably around 30. I want to go home. I want to go home. Yeah. That's actually the soul. All the soul. It's good you say that. All the soul is actually always kind of repeating is, I want to go home. Where's mommy and daddy? I want to go home. Where's mommy and daddy? That's it. The main lessening of the soul is that mommy and daddy are here in the heart with us now, and we are home. That's the primary lesson, that despite where we seem to be, we're home, and mommy and daddy are here. That's what all souls are seeking always. So we're almost all of us are dealing with that exact impetus. Everything we do is inspired by that. Every single thing we ever eat or do at all is inspired by that. It could be like, so for example, we eat because we know we need to feed to continue to do things and live, because we need to get home, right? For example. The interesting thing is that when we transcend that particular impetus, it becomes more like okay, I'm home. Now I'm trying to learn what my home looks like, my kingdom looks like with the creator. I'm actually speaking now with the creator, learning how the creator is seeing things with the creator. Like, it's very one-on-one. That state is available right now. So part of my job is to be like, hey, it's now. Yay. It's Christmas every day. Or it's Halloween, depending on what you want to look at. Every day the Christ is reborn in you. Every moment the Christ is reborn. Or it's Jack Skellington and Halloween and so Debbie says, you're welcome. Oh, I get that. Keep thinking. I want to go home. You're welcome. Debbie does what's termed as rescue mediumship. I help spirits be able to cross over and move on into, oh, that sounds cool. Higher densities, light, or heaven. It usually requires talking with them to help them with fear. That's awesome. I didn't know you did that. That sounds cool. I don't do anything like that. I do some like psychopomp, I think it's called, in shamanism type work. When things die around me or near me, or I hear of them, if I hear of death, I seek to offer guidance to that spirit. So I do the same thing. My work personally is a little different. It's like I try to find the spirit that I heard died somehow, and then I jump in and I'm like, hey, just so you know, you couldn't have died. Like, that's sort of what I do. Oh, Riverbank Psycho. What's up, dude? Actually, I don't know that you're a dude. What's up, androgynous being? um, what else? Is there anything else about astral projection? Does anyone else have any questions about astral projection or anything like that? Or do we have any other topics that we wanted to get into? I have a few more minutes probably before I have to get off. I guess, you know what? I see this word boundaries popping out. Boundaries are a challenging one. But boundaries, like with astral projection, we're talking about our boundaries with ourselves. But in our world, we also see our boundaries like sort of trampled on and things. And we're meant to learn like what boundaries are even essential to our peace and things like that. And so we end up establishing boundaries and then going into the astral and having different types of boundaries and mirrored experiences of these boundaries. So like we'll start to sometimes feel like there's a particular entity in the astral that we like keep engaging with that might be a really oppositional type of energy, like a demon or something that's in us that we're like talking to and like fighting with almost. And then we're having experience in the physical, and like we're getting that energy again from like this person in our life. It could be a stranger, but or it could be like someone in our family or something. And that's the most useful thing, I think, is like, wow, look at that. It's like mirroring itself. It's all the same thing. Wow, it's like me confronting myself or this aspect of myself. And the best way to handle these things I've found is to stop trying to think our way around it and like, what should I do? What should I do? Just go, hey, God, infinite knower of all things. Maybe go there, right? And just be like, what should I do, God? Father, what do I do? That's sort of like what I recommend. Yeah, boundaries. Yeah, you'll lose people. Yeah, you will. Yeah, it's especially people you've had for a while. Like they don't. Most people don't really know what boundaries even are. They don't observe them really. They don't keep track of them. It's also hard to keep track of other people's boundaries. Even as yourself, think about this, right? You try, but think about how much energy it is to actually remember what you're allowed to say to so and so and so and so and so and so. Like, you don't know what everyone's boundaries are. So, boundaries in themselves just cause problems, generally. But if one person has boundaries, then the other person will naturally need to be defensive in some way or confrontational somehow because there's a boundary. So it's a weird kind of paradox that a boundary will ensure separation and pain. Yet, boundaries are also needed for our comfort. So that's something that we need to really ponder within ourselves around where is our peace held now? Like, I don't have to be perfect and just accept everything, you know, but I also don't want to just deny things that I don't need to deny just because I'm uncomfortable either. Maybe there's some discomfort I need to like settle with, right? Maybe there's things that I'm trying to push away that are probably for my best or something. Those type of things. It's challenging to say. So boundaries are just like a really personal thing. Yeah, the answer when you say father, like it's very very like Riverbank Psycho said, it's very very quick, very fast, usually, very very certain. It can be quiet, but quick. Like it's the first thing that pops in, like the first noise, first voice usually, and then the ego responds to it. The ego is behind everything, behind everything. That's why the astral is in front of everything. The astral is the real stuff. The ego is trying to make sense of what it's experiencing, which is it's just writing down like, whoa, 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 okay, that happened. Whoa, we gotta write it down. Whoa, no. That's like the ego. It's catch up, playing catch up constantly. Yeah. If they can't respect, Debbie says, if they can't respect you and your boundaries, then losing them isn't really a loss. As your self-love and respect grows, the ones who can't give you love and respect all fall away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Riverbank. I mean, I lost my wife and kids in the way that I had them, which, but now it's all come back around as I've, I didn't lose them ever, but I lost what I did have. It just shifted into the new, which is more perfect for me. So it's, it's hard, but especially as a father or whatever, it's challenging. It's so hard. So hard. I don't even know what to say about it other than I did the same thing. Wife and I just bang, bang, bang. And then I had to go. There was no, I actually didn't even have a choice, honestly. And like when it came time to go, I was trying not to go. And then the government made me, more or less. So I left. And then I had to fight to get more access to my children. I had to demonstrate that I'm sane. And I didn't even really do anything. So I had this crazy experience, but all of it was the correct thing for me at that time. So I think that's sort of the main takeaway, is that it does work out all in the end, and it all makes sense as we get to the end of it, but it doesn't always make sense during. All right, well, that's almost an hour and 20 minutes. I think that was great. I really enjoyed the talk. I hope you guys had fun. Thank you guys so much. And I think that it's wonderful that everyone's here and hanging out. Debbie says, I lost my husband in 25 years, but honestly, the best thing that happened. You couldn't. Yeah, that's just what happens. It's just what happens. My ex-wife and I were together since I was 17, and we're still very, very good friends. We talk every day. We do everything with the kids. I hang out with the kids most of the week still, while she goes to work. So it's all very peaceful, harmonious. She's getting married to one of my buddies. It's all perfectly possible to be very peaceful, but we have to bring that peace and make sure that peace is our anchor. If we want. Sometimes people won't. And we have to be okay with that too. So sometimes people don't want peace. They want drama. And they want drama, which rhymes with what? Trauma. They just want to cycle through trauma and drama. And sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry, but this isn't for me. Thank you, everyone. So grateful for you.